this is still chapter 5, section 1. It's kind of like the second part, so 5.12. We are going to be factoring using a method called grouping. Factoring by grouping is used specifically when a polynomial has exactly 4 terms. Everything we've factored so far, quadratics and polynomial-wise, they've had 3 terms, an a value, a b value, a c value. We do our GCF, we do our x method, and we find our factors. If we have more than 3 terms, we can't really use the x method. We have this extra value now, and it kind of throws everything off. So we need a new way of factoring. That method is called grouping, and it's specifically for 4-term polynomials. Now, not every 4-term polynomial can be factored by grouping, but whenever you see one, you should try to factor it with grouping, because it's, I think, the easiest method of factoring. Okay, so I got some steps for you. There's only 3 quick little steps. Really, if you can find greatest common factors, you will be just fine. Now for these first couple, I'm going to do like that long finding the greatest common factor, making my list. But remember, that's just a strategy to help you if you ever get stuck. If you want to do it, you can. The factor sheet is still helpful for grouping. So, example 1, we have 3 steps we're going to use. Our first one is group your pairs with parentheses, and this is where it gets its name. It is called factor by grouping because we are going to make 2 groups. Our first 2 terms are x to the 3rd and 5x squared. That makes my first group, and I'm going to put them in parentheses. That is group 1. My second group are my second 2 terms, and watch very carefully. I'm not going to put my parenthesis in between the negative and the 4 because negative 4x is my first term in my second group, so I'm going to put it right in front. There's my second group. Group 1, group 2. This is group 1. This is group 2. Okay, so that's where it gets its name because we just created groups of terms. Questions on making groups? Easy peasy? Okay, step 2. Now we are factoring out our greatest common factor just like we've always been, but we're going to factor out a greatest common factor for each group separate. So my first group, x to the 3rd and 5x squared, I'm going to find the GCF of this group, and then I'll find a GCF for negative 4x and negative 20. Totally separate. Okay? You can think of it as 2 mini problems. So let's first look at our first group. What number is in front of this x to the 3rd? A 1. What are the factors of 1? Yeah, 1 and 1. And how many x's does it have? 3. 1, 2, 3. 5x squared. What are the ways or the factors of 5? 5 and 1. Yeah, 1 and 5, 5 and 1. And how many x's does this one have? 2. Okay? So what is their greatest common number? 1. We circle 1. How many x's can I take away from each term? I can take 2 away. So I'm going to circle 2 x's. So my greatest common factor is 1x squared. All right. What do we always do when we find a GCF? We put it in front and do what to the inside? divide. So let's do that. So let's put our 1x squared in front and write what's going to be left over. 1 divided by 1 is 1. I had x to the third, but then I did what? Took away 2 x's, so we're going to subtract 2 x's, leaving us with 1. 1x. 1x. Let's divide 5 divided by 1 is 5, positive 5. It had 2 x's and we took them both. So after finding the GCF of the first group, we are left with this. 1x squared times 1x plus 5. And now we're going to do the exact same thing to the second group. Again, it's kind of like, think of 2 little mini problems. So what are the factors of 4? 1 and 4, 2 and 2. Yeah, we're just going to treat it like a positive 4 for now. And I have an x. The factors of 20 are 120, 2, 10, and I heard 4 and 5, and we didn't have any x's. So what's my greatest common number? 4. Can I take any x's away?
No.
I cannot. So my GCF is
0.
What did we circle?
4.
4. Okay. Now the whole point of grouping is that when we divide our GCF out, we want what's left over to be exactly the same as what was left over in the first group. So if I divide negative 4 by 4, what do I get? Negative 1, but I want it to be positive 1. So instead of dividing out a positive 4, I'm going to divide out a negative 4. So we're going to divide out a negative 4, and that's going to go out front. And now we do what we did. Divide both of these by negative 4. So make sure sometimes it'll be a positive number you want to divide out. Sometimes it might be a negative number you want to divide out. You just need to make sure that what is ever left over after we divide it out is exactly the same as the first group. So negative 4 divided by negative 4 would be positive, and we still have an x. And look, they're starting to look the same. Negative 20 divided by negative 4 is positive 5. Do our groups look exactly the same? The groups inside the parentheses are, right? Our GCFs out front are a little different. Once we are here, we are ready to write our final answer. Now, it's really hard to visualize this, okay? So, our first group used to be this yellow highlighted, right? Our new group is this whole thing. This turned into this. And our second group turned into negative 4 times 1x plus 5. So these are considered 2 separate terms. These also have a GCF. This and this have a greatest common factor of 1x plus 5. Don't they both have 1x plus 5? So that's their GCF. And where do you put GCFs? Out in front. But we don't write 2 of them out front. Just like here, we only divided out a 1x squared, but we didn't write 2 1x squareds out front. Their greatest common factor are these 1x plus 5, so that goes out in front. And what's left over after we take this out, put it out front, took this out, put it out front, what's left? The front numbers. 1x squared minus 4. That is factoring. All done, that is factoring by grouping. We made two groups. We found their GCFs and wrote it out front. That's everything. This is factored. I know, that's why four-term polynomials are the best. So we can do factoring by grouping these real quick. That is factor by grouping. Questions on the grouping, the GCFs, or writing your final answer? If you go to factor by grouping and the two things in parentheses aren't the same, the things I crossed off in red, then it can't be factored by grouping and you would have to factor a different way. Okay, so it doesn't always work for four terms, and eventually we will learn what to do if it does not work, but all of our grouping problems today will work. Next problem, example dos. Hey, I want you to first group. Do step one, create your groups. Create your groups. Do it now.
Good.
Your groups should look like so.
Yep. Good.
After you have created your groups, use your factor sheets to find your greatest common factor. Remember, these are done separately. Make sure you take out the variables, too.
You should have it.
Good, good. What's your biggest number in common? Yep. Figure out how many x's to take away. Good, Mom. Good. I will begin to write my factors here shortly. Good. Remember, you would have circled 2 on both. But yeah, 2.
It's fine.
Wow. Okay, so here are all of my factors listed. I have my variables down below. If you look at your first group, what was the biggest number in common? 3. How many A's can you take away? Which means my greatest common factor is 3A to the second. If I look at my second group, 1 is the largest number. Can I take any numbers out? Nope. So my GCF is 1. So you grouped it. You found the GCF. Now before we divide out, are there any questions? Okay. Let's divide our front number and take out our A's. So we have 3A squared in front. Yep. 12 divided by 3 gives us 4. We had 3 A's, we took 2 away. Now we only have 1 A after the 4. Negative 9 divided by 3 is in fact minus 3. We had 2 A's and they're gone. Now, usually if the GCF is 1, do you really need to do anything? No. But in this case, we still have to write the +1 out in front because we need to make sure that when we do our last step and write our answer, we have 2 terms left over. So our GCF is positive 1, so we're going to put my plus 1. And what's going to be left when I divide these both by 1?
The same numbers in the last one.
Yep, 4a minus 3. Are our 2 groups exactly the same? Yep. So that's our greatest common factor. We're going to get rid of them and write it out front. 4a minus 3. And what 2 terms are left over? 3a squared plus 1. Factored. Done. How was that? Good. We go next. Alright, you know what to do. Move them up, find your GCF, take it out. Bigger number. I have my factors written out. My first group, 4. How many R's? 4 R's. Greatest common factor is 4. And I can take 4 R's. So the GCF is 4r to the 4th. My second one, my GCF is 1, and I can take away 2 R's. My GCF is 1r to the 2nd. And then divide out your GCFs. Oh, did I make a mistake? You're right, it is 8. Yes, it is 8. Eight is my largest number. 8r to the 4th. Thank you. So put your 8r to the 4th out front. And let's divide it out. 8 divided by 8 is 1. I had r to the 5th. I take 4 r's away. So now I just have a 1r. 84r to the 4th divided by 8 is just 8. I took all of my r's away. So just 8. My next GCF was positive 1r squared, so plus 1r squared. And I am now going to divide everything by 1 and take 2 r's away. So I'm left with just 1r for the first term and just minus 8 for the second. My groups are exactly the same. I have a 1r minus 8, a 1r minus 8, so we're going to factor it out and put it out front. My final answer, 1r minus 8 times the leftovers, 8r to the 4th, plus 1r squared, and we can be done. Factored by grouping. Give number 4 a go. I'll let you get all the way through it. Like a little birdie that's jumped out the nest. Live or die, up to you. The nest is pretty high. How many x's do you take out? How many is the smallest 1/2? How many are there? So you can take 3 from both. Perfect. So it'd be 4x to the 3rd. Yep. And your other one you can't take. You can take how many x's? From both. Huh? How many does this one have? This one has 2, so you can take 1 from both. So 5. Good work, good work. I'm liking what I'm seeing. Well done, well done. Be very careful with your second. Yep. All right. Here's another problem you have to be very careful about. Okay, I'm going to divide out my 4x to the 3rd by putting it out front, leaving me with 1x plus 2. Okay, now before we do the next one, if I divide negative 5x squared by 5x, what would I end up with? Negative 5 divided by 5 would give me negative 1. Does that match my other group? No. So I can't divide out a positive 5x, I need to divide out a negative 5x. If your two factors, your two things in parentheses at the end don't match exactly, then you either didn't take out the right numbers, or it can't be factored by grouping. So we need to divide out a negative 5x, so that when I divide negative 5x squared by negative 5x, I'm left with 1x, which matches. And then I'll divide negative 10 by negative 5, giving me positive 2, and take away the x. Now my groups match. If I divided 5, I would have negative 1x minus 2, which does not match my other group. Okay, so be careful with the negatives. These are the same, so we factor them out and put them out front. 1x plus 2. On the inside, we're left with 4x to the third minus 5x, my two leftover terms. And that is factoring by grouping.